Yo, 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 welcome everybody. Welcome to Swish for Real. It's your boy Big Mike in the house. I got my co-host with me, Boogey Bob. What's up, Boogie?
Yo, 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 Big Mike, having a good day here. We got some great guests tonight.
Yeah, it's a Mavs-centric podcast today. As you can see, there's Dallas in the building. We got a Dallas legend with us. We got Edward Egros, and we're going to start the conversation off and learn a little bit about Edward and Eric at the same time. But Eric, man, tell us about your day, man. How things going on your end of the world, man?
Well, things are going pretty well. Out here, I'm back in Nebraska at the time. I cover a lot of Nebraska sports and pretty much sports throughout the state, as well as national sports. I have two sports talk shows. We have a TV station on Allo Channel 961, as well as we stream on all the platforms similar to you. We also use StreamYard as well to do our streaming.
Nice.
And then we have a radio station, 93.7 The Ticket, which
Nice.
handles a portion. And so my show On the Block is from 2 to 4. And then I have 6 to 7 on Thursdays with a good close friend of mine, Cluster Johnson. We both went to Nebraska together. So tonight I'm covering the Nebraska game versus Indiana, and that's why I'm a little short today. I couldn't stay as long as I probably would have loved to, but I am a MFFL person for life. There's no doubt about that. Being a former Maverick, it's just a lot of love. I actually got to come back next week to do a little event for the Mavericks, to speak to some of the fans as well as their season ticket holders. So I still get a chance to stay pretty close to them as well. So it's good to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me.
Nice. And guys, Edward Egros, man, that is my guy back in the day. He's a good guy. Edward, how things going on your side of the world, man? Give people a little bit about you, man.
Yeah, it's so great to see you, Big Mike, Eric. It's great to see you. It's so funny. I was thinking about you the other day. I finally got a hold of the Nebraska volleyball documentary that ESPN put together, and all the scenery of Lincoln and the university and all of that stuff. Like it really brought the story home. And so I kind of felt like I was living vicariously with you a little bit, because those are old stomping grounds. That was fantastic. But no, it's great to see you guys again. I know it's been a little bit, but I guess since I saw you guys last, moved out to Los Angeles. Been here for almost 4 years now, which is just wild to think. Before that, I was in Dallas. I was the weekend sports anchor at Fox 4. Had a fantastic time out there. Also did a little bit of stuff with what was Fox Sports Southwest, now Bally, now FanDuel.
It's all over the place now.
Yeah, it is. But that's the way of the world in media. You come to expect it. But yeah, been in LA for close to 4 years now, and I've been running around as you would expect, I'm sure. Still with FanDuel Sports West, still doing stuff now for the Clippers and the Angels and the LA Kings, and it's a wonderful group to work with. Really get into the nitty gritty when it comes to the analytics of those teams, and that's fun to do. Also been doing a little professoring. Currently at Cal Lutheran, teaching a sports management class, and having a great time doing it, and sharing my love and enthusiasm for all things sports, whether it's sports analytics, sports marketing, sports journalism, anything and everything. I get a chance to impart some wisdom on the future generation, and having a great time out here. Braving some fires. That wasn't fun this week, but we're all good there. So having a fantastic time out in LA, and ready to talk some hoops.
Talking hoops is what we're going to do today. First, we're going to talk to our guy, Erick Strickland. He's a former Dallas Maverick, guys. If you didn't know, the boy can hoop, in my opinion. When I watched him, I'm a diehard Mavs fan, as you can see. I've some of the dunks that he did on people, I'm like, oh my God, we got to sign this guy for at least a few more years. So I want to ask you a couple of questions. You grew up in, am I correct, Alabama, right?
Well, that's pretty good, Big Mike. You did your research. A lot of people don't know that. Yeah, I was born, and I grew up till I was about 7 years old in Opelika, Alabama, which is literally a dual city to Auburn. So Auburn University, Opelika, they're connected cities. Basically, a hospital connects them to each other, and so That's where I was born, and then my father was a military officer. So in my youth, there's a few things that happened as a young man in school that led him to basically pull me up to Great Falls, Montana, to which then I ended up in Lompoc at Vandenberg Air Force Base before coming to Offutt in the middle of my 7th grade year, in which I'd been pretty much here through junior high school at Bellevue West, and then going to play for the University of Nebraska in basketball before coming out to Dallas to be a Mav. And that's where it all began for me. And it was a tremendous experience. And I look, it was good that I was a piece and a part of the transition of that team becoming who they are now.
Man, you are a very big part to it, man. Bob, you have any questions you want to go before I just go all in with my questions?
Oh yeah. So Eric, I'm kind of the stats guy on our podcast, and shout out to Cerebral Sports and Ryan and Dame Reeves, who collect really good data. But I'm engineers. We're kind of into. So kind of looking back on your career, like you played 500 games in 9 seasons, and you averaged 7.5 points, 2.6 rebounds, and 2.4 assists. You played with Coach Greg Buckner, and you played against Jason Kidd. So I have 2 questions. What was it like to play against Jason Kidd?
Okay, so here, that's actually how I made the Mavericks, to be honest. As a high schooler at Bellevue West, we had a national team. So AAU wasn't AAU by the way that it is now, right? So, but we all had a national team to which we would go and play in specific tournaments, maybe a couple tournaments throughout the year, a lot of them in our region. But all of us at some point and another would find ourselves in Vegas for a tournament. So Jason's going into our senior year, Jason was the #1 player in the country at that time in our class. We knew he was going to Cal. We were at Nebraska, and a couple of my teammates were going to end up going to Nebraska. This might have been Jason's junior year. It might have been our junior year. So we ended up playing out in Vegas. This was to go to the Final Four. This was in the Final 8. And I knew my assignment was going to be Jason, and Jason's assignment was going to be me. So I shut him down. I held him to like 5 points in that game, and he shut me down too. It was just like a wash. And one of my good friends, Andre Woolridge, who was my rival here in the state, he goes nuts. He goes nuts for 30. And I'm like, dang, let me get a taste of that. They got him, Jason, playing me the whole game. Switch him over. Let me get some of that. We're both defensive gurus, and so we just kind of washed each other out. So now when I get a chance to go to play for the Mavericks, I'm called in. I know who he is. I'm not scared of him like all these other cats are in the league and all that stuff. I wasn't afraid of him. So it was pretty close to us getting into some fisticuffs a few times because of the fact that, I was on him like fly on doo-doo. And where he was like trying to chill, I was trying to get a job. You know what I mean? So that was the main issue about how Jason and I were connected there in the Mavs, and made the team, and then got cut, and Don Nelson brought me back, and that was the history of how I got to become a Dallas Maverick for a little bit longer.
And when he was the New York Nets, when they went to the finals, you got to play with him, right?
No. So when he was with the Nets and they were going to the finals, I was actually in Boston. So I was in Boston, and we ended up playing them in the conference finals. We lost in 6, and the other times, that's probably the only time we got to face each other in a real significant game. My coach Jim O'Brien, he didn't really play me in that one. That was pretty disappointing. The reason being is that while we were making that run in Boston, it was me, then Kenny Anderson. But when it came to playing the Nets, we 3-1'd them in the season. We were actually we had the second best record in the conference at that time, even though we were the 3rd seed. And we 3-1'd New Jersey. But then Coach O'Brien played favoritism because he, he was obviously a coach at Kentucky, and Tony Delk was a guy that played for him. We acquired Tony Delk late. He decides to play Tony Delk, and Jason Kidd goes nuts. And so we didn't stay to the plan that helped us to beat them 3-1, and it ultimately cost us a chance to go to the finals.
So you're saying Jason Kidd was licking his chops when he saw you sitting on the bench, huh?
That's a fact. That's a fact.
So,
that's the funny thing. A lot of people, Bob, when they had to face me, like, it would be funny because they knew it just wasn't going to be an easy night. They knew it was going to have to work. So there would be times where, like, Baron Davis and those guys would be like, "Dang, Strick, I'm on back-to-back, man. Just chill, man. chill. I didn't know how to play like that. I didn't know how to play like chill. It'd be funny sometimes. We'd meet Allen Iverson at half court, and I'd have to talk to the coaches when I'm playing against Allen Iverson, and I'd have to say, like, look, listen, I'm 220, Allen's 160. Don't be giving him them fouls when he bumps into me and I don't move. Allen to come over there talking about, "Nah, Strick, no, you be fouling," and we would just have these little tussles. So it would be fun, man. It was just some fun times in the league.
So I've been a Mavs season ticket holder for 25 years now, and I got to watch you play as a privilege as a Maverick. And I always thought of you. Every team needs a glue player, the guy that does the dirty work, that plays the defense. It glues the team, and you were always that glue, when you played for the Mavericks. So my second question was, what was it like to play with Dirk, Nash, and Finley all when they were young and just starting?
I was going to ask that same question.
Well, it definitely was. It was fun. It was fun to get an opportunity to run the court with those guys because they were truly professionals. They were truly professionals, and that's what I loved about being able to play with them. It was refreshing to have them come on to the team, and so because the culture was bad prior to them, it was just it was a lot of egos and sword fighting contests in the locker room about who was the man, who was going to do what, who was going to be who between those three young guys, and they just couldn't figure it out. But everybody understood what their positioning was, what their role was, and from game to game, it could change. It could be a game that I go off. It could be a game that Sid would go off. It could be a game that Steve would go off. Mm-hmm. And what I loved about Don Nelson is Don Nelson didn't care. He was like we called him a mad scientist because he would do some unique things in allowing us, in the strengths of what we do, to cause riffraff amongst the other teams, and them, not necessarily us figuring out how we were going to play them. It was them figuring out how they were going to play us, i.e. an example of that is when we were playing against San Antonio. Like we actually were able to handle San Antonio pretty well. But the reason is because Don, he would think out of the box. We couldn't match up with them even to even. David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Sean Elliott, they were big across the front court, Mario Ellie, and then the little general. So what Don figured out was what he would do is Don would then put me on Tim Duncan, and then he would put Sid or even Dirk. He would sometimes Dirk would play David Robinson, maybe AC Green. Sid would play Sean Elliott. Mike would play Mario Ellie. Mike Finley would play, and then Steve Nash. They would put so it can protect Steve. He didn't have to worry about overly guarding the little general because he just couldn't shoot like that. So it was a way for us to figure them. How are they going to guard us? Because I would just press up on. You could be physical back then, so I would just be real physical with Tim Duncan. I'd keep him far enough off the block so that he just wouldn't be able to get deep on me. I rebounded well for a guard, so I just keep him off, be physical with him, and press up on him because he couldn't beat me off the dribble, and I just let him shoot that bank shot with me challenging. But they had to figure out how to guard us on the other side, and that's how we were able to beat them. So I love that. I love playing with that team. It was fun.
So I mentioned glue player, and one of the guys on that team you don't hear of, and may he rest in peace, but Sean Rooks was the center on that team, and I love Sean Rooks as a center. He was all hustle and grit, and he was one of those players you like to have on your team, but you don't want to have to play against, much like you. I kind of, I think Pat Beverly copied your game, in the
He
defensive
just talks
mindset.
more. He just talks more, Boogey Bob. I just handle
Yeah.
business. He just talks a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. You walk the walk, and all he did was talk the talk. But I love Sean Rooks. He was kind of that bridge center in between, and so
No doubt.
And I lived through the '90s. I had season tickets through the 3Js in the early '90s and the late '90s. Like I said, 25 years. And Wild Dog, who's in the house,
Wild
has
Dog.
been with the Mavericks for a long time. I'm sure he remembers seeing you, and I'm sure
The
Big Mike's
reunion
got
rowdies is what you call them. The reunion rowdies. That's what y'all used to be called.
Yes, sir.
So Eric, let me
We're
ask you this
still
quick
rowdy,
question.
loud, and proud.
When Dennis Rodman was on the same squad you played, is there any type of situations where you found like Dennis Rodman maybe didn't come to practice on time, or what was some of the things that they let him get away with that other players couldn't get away with?
Listen, let me be honest with you, Big Mike. We actually would have made the playoffs if we didn't sign Dennis.
Oh wow!
We would have made the play because we ended up, I think, losing 10 out of 12 games while he was playing with us, and we missed the playoffs by maybe 6 games or something like that. So Dennis, if we would have got the Chicago Bull Dennis Rodman, we would have been fine. But it was literally like playing 4-on-5 whenever Dennis was on the court because we just didn't know what the heck he was going to do. His rotations were bad. He rebounded. He did all of those things, but it was more of an issue with him being there. Now, here's an issue. Stricky got left one day because I ended up being a few minutes late to the plane. So I got left. So I had to catch my own flight and fly. I think we're going west. So it might have been going to like Golden State or somewhere like that. So I had to catch a flight to going out there.
Dang.
Lo and behold, Dennis Rodman, we sitting there waiting for almost a half an hour on the plane. And I was heated. I was trying my best to fire up. I wanted to go ask somebody so bad because I'm like, oh, so you leaving strict for 2 minutes, but we waiting 30 for Dennis, huh? And so that was something. And it was crazy. The other thing that we literally had to do is we changed our pregame stuff because Dennis would always lift before, then he would shower while everybody else is doing their pregame stuff. So we literally kind of had to go on the flow of what Dennis was doing because he had his own different program and what he was doing as far as pregame was concerned. So it was wild. It was a wild 20 days. It was a wild 20 days.
So just joining us, guys, it's our other co-host in the building, Wild Dog. I think you're on mute. Are you good, Wild Dog? I see you're on mute. Can't hear you.
Your mic's muted, Wild Dog. There you go.
There you go. Well, he went back on mute.
So was that during the Carmen Electra days that Dennis played with the Mavericks?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was during that time frame. I have to say, I actually got to hang out. This is a story that's not meant for PG-13, but we actually met at Lake Texoma too. While I was out there, I got a houseboat. He had brought one of his boats out there, and so we did get to hang out there. But that's a different story as well. We'll leave that one alone. But Dennis was cool though. He was cool. He was wild. He was towards the end of his days, and he was just kind of finishing up his run.
Strick, you can take my time to share that story. I don't have to.
Yeah, we a family channel, baby. We can't share that.
All right, so Wild Dog, you're unmuted, so I'm glad to hear you made it in, man. I didn't get to ask how was your day, but I'm pretty sure it was awesome. Do you have any questions before we move on for Erick Strickland regarding his life and time as a basketball player?
Oh, he went right into the heart of my question was really going to be about his view and opinions on basketball culture, and he went right into the locker room for us. So the only other thing I had was kind of off cuff was when was the last time anybody referred to him as Demerick?
Wow. Yo, wild dog, you didn't just put it all out in hyperspace. There's a lot of people that don't know that name, man. There's a lot of people that don't know that, man. They don't know that you shave off the DEM and you get Eric. They don't know that, but you just told the whole secret.
Dang.
It's been a long time. There's a few females that know me, and that's kind of their way of getting my attention or something. They'll say, say that name. But other than that, there's not many people that use it.
My bad. I knew it was kind of a password, but not necessarily a pass key. My bad.
No doubt.
Appreciate it. So guys, now we get the treat to talk to one of my good friends. I haven't spoken to him in a minute, but it's glad to have him on, Mr. Edward Egros. Welcome back, man. How you doing, brother?
Doing very well. And, like I said.
Pause before you get into it with Edward. Or do you guys still need me? Or is this going to be the Edward show?
Just a few more minutes.
A few more minutes?
Yeah.
There we go.
Go ahead.
Things are good. Just getting ready for Christmas right now. That's a big thing to do around here is I'm like Strick was saying how he's originally from Alabama. I'm originally from Louisiana, and so we've got that Southern heritage there, and I'll be there for Christmas, and so it's fun to sort of see how different cultures kind of celebrate Christmas, and so that's kind of been the mindset. And by the way, I gave finals this week. So not nearly as interesting as Demerick, but.
So Edward's known me a little bit, and he didn't know that. He didn't even know that, and that's what's crazy.
I did not. That is news to me.
Hey, thanks for verifying my street cred, Mr. Strickland.
All right.
Yes, sir.
So Edward,
I'm nobody, but my network is that's how I know.
Right. Edward, so when Dallas faced off against the Clippers in the playoffs 2 years ago. What was the city like when LA? What was the thought about the Mavericks at the time when we were playing against the Clippers at that moment?
It's interesting. Like I thought that, first off, when you're talking about LA sports fanaticism, I mean it basically starts with the Lakers.
Mm-hmm.
People go nuts over them, and I think people go nuts over the Dodgers, and USC football is also a big deal. There really isn't the buzz for the Clippers. As you would get for most any other NBA team, and I think that's just because historically the Lakers have been king, and so when it came to that particular series, I think if we're talking about the most recent one, there were a lot of questions about Kawhi Leonard's status, what was that going to mean going forward, and if the Mavs really have it with the pieces that they were able to acquire. That was definitely a big concern because Mavericks were going off in the second half of last season. And so, there was this real concern that, okay, who are the best players in this series? And are they going to be able to step up to a certain level? And I think it's why when Kawhi wasn't playing, the Clippers looked like a different basketball team that maybe the Mavs weren't prepared for. But, when Kawhi was out there, clearly he wasn't 100%. And it was something that I think was sort of slowing the pace down, making this more accessible to Luka and company. Certainly the bigs were able to play a good bit better in that situation. And I think in other previous series, I mean, sometimes the Clippers were able to take advantage of certain things, but you could tell that there was a certain evolution with Luka to where, okay, the Clippers need to get their shots in now because at some point the Mavericks are going to be for real. Especially if they get, the right surrounding cast. And I think probably we saw that evolution sort of come to a head in this most recent series. And so I look at this and go, I wouldn't necessarily say the Clippers' window of opportunity is closed right now, but it's definitely something that's had to get adjusted substantially just so that, they're not the same Clippers team that, other teams were expecting them the last few years.
So do you think that Harden has actually supplanted Kawhi as far as, fan appreciation, fan loving him more than they do with Kawhi? Because I think Harden's been really hooping like crazy.
He has been. It was actually one of the things that I talked about for FanDuel was that if you look at usage rate last season compared with this season, Harden has had the biggest difference. He's been relied upon, and the offense has run through him more now this year than last year by a greater margin than any other player in the NBA. I think Malik Beasley is second, and Norman Powell is third, which would make logical sense because they've had to reform a good bit with Paul George being out, Kawhi not being able to return from injury as of yet. So it's definitely something where Harden, and look, he's a savvy veteran. I think one of the things about him that, if you really watch the games, you see it, he's not, drawing contact, shooting threes nearly as much as he used to. Part of that's the rule change. He's not even shooting as many threes as he used to. He's driving to the basket a good bit more. And he's also willing to assist it to Powell a good bit more, who's, absolutely shooting lights out right now. He's got one of the top 3-point percentages in the NBA right now. And also with Powell, he's also able to create off the dribble, which was something that he wasn't able to do just as recently as last season. And so you're seeing Powell evolve a good bit more. And a lot of that involves the play of James Harden to where, I think in terms of, him being a fan favorite, absolutely, because he's out there, he's doing a lot. The Clippers are playing pretty well, I'd say. I do believe that Harden has sort of taken over the mantle as the fan favorite.
Yeah, I seen that happening too. Before we let you go, Eric, I got one last question before I let you go. What were your thoughts when the Mavs made the finals last year? Do you think they had a great chance to win it, or is just Boston was just a buzzsaw and we couldn't get past that team?
No, I was actually impressed with the run that they made. It was good that they kind of figured out who they were running with and who they had, what their personnel was. You had the big fella, starting center.
Lively.
Now.
Yeah.
Huh?
Lively
and Gafford.
No. Good draft for him.
Oh, Gafford.
He was one that trade for Gafford, I think, set the map, because I don't think they knew what they had and what they were going to get out of him initially. Mm-hmm. But I think he found out that he was a great fit and he was a great chemistry figure for them as well. I don't even think they actually knew fully what was going to be with PJ Washington as well.
Yeah.
So there were a couple of pieces that came together for that team that I don't think they knew exactly what they had in full. But I think what hurt them was ultimately shooting, the consistency of shooting. And yes, I think his usage rate was mad crazy. I did like the fact of the balance of Luka as well as Kyrie. I think that was a good balance. And then just Kyrie not playing well. I think Kyrie kind of got caught up in the whole Boston situation with when he was there and how he left. And I think it ultimately got into his head and it cost him a little bit about how he was going to be focused in that series. And once you get down to a Boston series and once they're shooting the way that they're shooting, it's just one of those things that you just fell into a juggernaut and came up short that time.
Yeah,
so Eric, you know how teams always have to have a dog to compete and nicknames go around. So last year when they got Gafford, I nicknamed Gafford and Lively the Smash Brothers.
Yeah. I mean, definitely, they do play with great energy. Obviously, the injury to Lively hurt them a little bit because they weren't able to use and take advantage of what he's able to bring. And as he continues to develop and his stretch abilities continue to grow, they've got some great pieces on that team that they can do some things. I like the makeup of their team. It's still going to take some time. The West is obviously really tough to navigate through. There's going to be a lot of roller coasters, ups and downs. Hopefully they catch fire and catch a run at the right time that can propel them through the playoffs. It's just going to be a juggernaut to get through.
Absolutely. Again, we appreciate you jumping on. I know you got to get ready for your show.
Go ahead. Wild Dog had one thing.
Yeah.
I got a little more time. Go ahead, Wild Dog.
Yeah.
Well, let me hit you with this because I know Boogey Bob and I are on the same page, but if it was your call and you had Klay Thompson, how many minutes would he get during the regular season?
During the regular season,
how would you use him? How would you use him?
It would be 15 to 20 during the regular season, and then if he's going off, he could extend up to about 25 until we got a little bit later in the season. I would save him as much as possible. I always felt that was the issue in Golden State. It's not that he can't play; it's that just long minutes. The style of Golden State is somewhat kind of similar because they do transition really, a good tempo with Dallas, but all of that running, all of that, cutting and back cutting, and then having to play defense at a high clip, it wears on you, man. And I think his body, with the injuries that he's had, you got to think about the seriousness of his injuries as well. I think you want to minimize him so that he can be well equipped when you really, really need him to show up for that team.
So, Eric, you can validate this being that you're a player, but as a coach, I always had this phrase because I played a lot of pickup ball, but I mean, I was a scrub, but I had this phrase, legs go, shot go.
Facts.
If I could run you into the ground, you might get past me, but once I can make you tired and your legs would go, your shot was going to go.
Facts. That's a fact. And it isn't that he doesn't have them or he's not in shape. It's just that, Father Time finds you sooner or later.
And then our thought process is like looking back on 2011, he's kind of our,
Peja.
2025, Peja Stojakovic.
Yeah.
He's a hired mercenary. You know what I'm saying? Let the young guys get their minutes. And when we need him, or he's hot, let him do his thing. But we need him to get over the hump. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Experience to get through the playoffs. So, yes, sir.
No doubt. And how I'll complete that whole thing is the issue sometimes when you're dealing with someone that has ascended to that level. Our time is different. We can come to the realization in some instances outside of like the Allen Iversons and the likes of them, right? But Peja's just a really humble cat. I think with Klay feeling that he has something that he needs to prove, and I think with that humility aspect of him, I just don't know if he can get to that point. He would have to really humble himself because he would take it as a slight, as opposed to we're trying to get you right. You hear me now? He will take it as a slight as opposed to I'm trying to get you right. And so I just don't know if he would be able to really comprehend that fully because he thinks he needs to show and prove as to why he left, unfortunately.
Do you think he's better suited coming off the bench or should he be a starter? Because my opinion, I think he should come off the bench as far as Klay Thompson goes.
I do too. But then he'll make a case to say, I can't get into my rhythm. You see what I'm saying? That's just these discussions that unfortunately you as a coach, you just have to be able to have. You have to be able to sell and show the why as to why it makes sense for you to do this. Hey, look, I would say it from the standpoint of like, look, that first team, look, we got Kai, there's not a lot for you. I need you to be able to come in, with that second group and light a fire under it, or something to that tune, you know what I mean? To get him to understand. But guess who did embrace it and it worked for the Mavs? Jason Terry.
Yep.
Yes.
Uh-huh. I was about to say that. That was in my head. I was Jason Terry did the same thing. So with that,
if you could have sold that to him, if you could have sold it to him, yeah. Yes, sir.
So you saying Nebraska is playing who tonight?
Indiana. So Coach Mike Woodson will be in the building tonight. Old Woody.
He'll
be in here.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
So they're about to get started in about 10 minutes.
I'm an Oklahoma Boomer Sooner. So, you're much bigger than me. I'll take it easy on you being a Cornhusker.
Love, I do appreciate it.
I'm a Louisville Cardinal, so hey, what's up?
That's all good, man. One of my high school my high school teammate, his name is Greg Hepburn. His son Chucky Hepburn is now at Louisville.
Nice.
Chucky.
Yeah. Chucky Hepburn is the point guard there. So yeah, man, you guys are great. Edward, man, it's good to see you again. I'm sorry I can't stay the whole time. This game is going to start in about 10 minutes, but you guys are great, man. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
Man, gotta find where it is on the TV and record it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something to talk about a little later.
You're welcome back anytime.
Yeah, anytime you want to come back through, man, we the show is open for you, man.
All right. Y'all be blessed, man. Take care of yourself. Love.
Enjoy your night, man. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Have a good one. Edward.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Egros, you can roll right into that. Is it going to be unanimous, or do you have a different?
That's when you're in the lineup and you're like, I got to follow that act.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like I am coming off the bench, and I can see why he doesn't like doing it.
Well, I don't know if you've had a chance to. I think I sent you a couple links on Facebook, but we had Kiki Vandeweghe a couple of weeks ago, and man, what a treat just to listen and learn from him. What a great guy.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
So we're glad. Amazing. We're equally glad to have you on the show too. You know, we'll ring your bell and come at you with some questions.
Of course.
No, thanks.
And we'll let Wild Dog. I got to talk much. Me and Mike. I'll let Wild Dog start with the questions for you, Edward.
No, I was just trying to get a segue on the Klay Thompson thing. That's what I was trying to get. Just keep it rolling.
No. We got the assist going. Point to the assist guy. We got this, Wild Dog.
Got it. So we're actually gonna pivot to looking back at Mavs history and why did they choose to come to Dallas? And there was Norm Sanju and Don Carter actually got these guys into our city, and I was a little kid at the time when they first came. I wasn't even thinking about basketball, and I'm pretty sure Edward, you were probably in Louisiana and not even thinking about none of this stuff.
Right. Yeah. In fact, I think it was before my time, paying attention to any of that stuff. But it from what I understand as far as studying the history of the Mavericks and really, figuring out what makes them tick, what makes them such a special franchise in the NBA. I think one of the things, and we still talk about it to this day, but I think it bears repeating, especially looking back to the late 1970s, is that Dallas is a football town. We can say it. We can say it openly. It's fine.
The state in general.
Yeah, it's been that way for a long time, and it probably will continue to be that way, as long as, we're on this planet. And, to an extent, there's nothing wrong with that. The Cowboys, being as big as they are, Texas high school football being as big as they are. Now the fact that, let me make sure I get, the SMU pony right up there, on the camera there. I got to do that.
There you go.
College football, has a real epicenter in Dallas now, and all that's fine. And so when you're thinking about, okay, can another sport succeed in the city of Dallas, you can understand why there would be some apprehensions to opening something up there. And, Don Carter and company basically said, no, this city is big enough. We can, get a plot of land for Reunion Arena and make this work. And eventually they got their way. And it's now the franchise that they are, going through, all these different stages. But I do think that as with any other professional sport, it took a little while for them to discover the South and the Southwest and even the state of Texas. But ultimately, when they did, they realized that, yes, there is a fantastic sports fanaticism here that does extend above and beyond football. And, once that realization happens, then, the Mavericks are able to work. And I know it was something, too, where I read that the Buffalo Braves were even thinking about moving to Dallas before ultimately the new owner really wanted an NBA team in his home state of California. So they moved to San Diego, ultimately became the San Diego Clippers, now the LA Clippers. So it's something where that interest had lasted for a little while. Some very smart, powerful people realized that Dallas was this untapped market because the stigma of being a football city, wasn't entirely true. And it's something that you guys understand. And I think all of us who spent a lot of time in Dallas understand that as long as the team is marketed really, really well, then you're going to have followers. You're going to have a fantastic fan base. Mavericks have done an unbelievable job with that. I think the Dallas Stars have done an unbelievable job with that. Hockey in Texas, how's that supposed to work? Well, it has. They've won the cup, and they're doing very well over these last couple of years. And I know a lot of people, friends of mine in Dallas, are really excited about hockey. So it's something where the stereotype may have existed for a reason, but I'm very grateful, for the old guard to be able to break through it and get the Mavericks where they are now.
Yeah, bringing them to Dallas. Well, I thought it was an amazing feat myself. Wild Dog, what are your thoughts when you think about what brought the Mavericks to Dallas, and how did you take it as a youngster?
I don't like this question because I've come a long way, but I was a young baller who was like, "What?" I was against it. I was like, the timing is wrong. I was like, they're going to dilute the league. They're going to dilute the talent. The timing of it is wrong. I don't disagree with it happening. I disagree with the timing of it. I was so opinionated. That I followed every single thing about the Dallas Mavericks, And then it became easier because Del Griffith from the University of Louisville Cardinals went on to the Utah Jazz, right? So a lot of his best games, right, were against the Mavericks, the struggling up and coming Mavericks. So, but my brother especially knew I followed the Mavericks ever since because I was so against it. I'm like, let me see what they do. Let me see how they're doing. And then little did I know, I would come to Texas in 1989, and little did I know, well, I kind of knew, but then I ended up selling and creating my life in Dallas, in 97, and then going on to work for the Mavericks. So it's just a real twist that I was adamant that no, like not now, maybe 10 years from now. that was my hardcore staunched opinion, so much so that I was very analytical and prejudiced against anything that was going on with the Mavericks. But the twist of that was when they made their turn, and I saw how the city, you see back then they would show a lot of like interaction with fans in different clips when you come to the city. It wasn't just about the game, right? And so I was seeing how the city was embracing it and this and that, and it was like, well, shoot. And I kind of softened up a bit over the years. And then by the time Orlando Blackman and Derek Harper and Brad Davidson around, I already knew I knew as much about them as I did about my 76ers, So I'm very grateful now that I wasn't a decision maker, right? and that my life turned like a team that I knew so well from the very beginning that I end up becoming a part of the franchise and contributing. And I'm straight up Mavs fan for life, for real. So
MFFL, man, that's a great story. I know when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about the Mavs, or I've never watched basketball in general until one of my friends how they had the little black and white TVs back in the day. They had the little antenna. You put the battery in it and you watch. I don't know. You probably a little bit before your time, Edward. But a friend of mine was sitting.
We had to scroll. Like we had an old portable TV where we had to.
Those right there.
And it was like UHF, VHF, switch the dial there, and all that.
13 inches, dude. 13-inch screen.
Yeah,
right.
Lucky if you get 13 inches.
Yeah, lucky if you get 13 inches.
So my introduction was the Dallas Mavericks facing off against the Lakers when they had Magic Johnson, and I was like, "This is exciting." I mean, because I wasn't even into basketball, but the guy who I was watching it with, he was so intense. Grab the ball. He was just going crazy because it was like it was beating them, but then they end up losing. But that was my introduction to Dallas basketball. Bob, what was your thoughts when the franchise got accepted in Dallas and they built it here?
Well, I'm going to hit that question, but I'm going to wind it back here just a little bit because I got a couple questions for Edward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Tell me about Clipper Darrell.
Clipper Darrell.
The famous fan for the LA Clippers. They call him Clipper Darrell.
Oh, I unfortunately, I don't really know him.
All right.
Yeah,
well,
I got nothing for you there.
He threw
Okay.
you when you can hit a
Man,
curveball.
Out of the strike zone,
Yeah.
ball. The other thing I want to know is what's been your favorite interview and what's your favorite story as being a broadcaster?
Well, let's stick to the Mavs here as far as that's concerned. I mean, any opportunity I had to chat with Dirk, was great to come through. Like it really was fantastic. And no offense to anyone I chat with now or cover now or analyze now, but Dirk Nowitzki just set a certain bar when it comes to classiness that is next to impossible for anyone to meet, much less exceed. And I remember years ago, I was fairly young at Fox 4 at the time. Dirk Nowitzki every single year put on his Dirk Heroes baseball game out in Frisco. And it was always a fantastic event, and all these great celebrities with the Mavericks and the Cowboys and such, came and helped out. The fact that Dirk is such a big figure in Dallas says everything you need to know when it comes to how all these different people were willing to come out and play for him. And it was something where I was going to do a sit-down interview with him about it. And I was working on my master's degree, and I had to, do all these other responsibilities that I was told, okay, this is the sit-down time with Dirk. This is when you're going to do the interview, et cetera, et cetera. And for some reason, I don't know who planted this thought in my head, and I won't accept responsibility for it, even though I probably should. But for some reason, I thought it was at the ballpark in Arlington and not up in Frisco at the AA Rough Riders place. And so I get over there, and I don't see anyone, and I'm flipping out. Like, oh my God, how is this possible? And so I'm, I call anybody and everybody with the station to figure out what's going on. Then I figure out it's in Frisco, and I have never driven that fast in my life to make sure that I don't miss this thing. I was so embarrassed and all of those things. And so I finally get over there, and I'm apologizing to Mavs PR. I'm apologizing to my photographer. Like, I didn't know. I don't know how I thought this, et cetera, et cetera. And Dirk Nowitzki, the greatest Maverick of all time, even at that point, was willing to redo his schedule to make sure that we had this sit-down interview. We still were able to make it work, and he couldn't have been nicer. And yeah, he gave me some teasing as far as a little bit of ribbing, I guess, when it comes to going to the wrong place. But after my face stopped being so beet red, we sat down and we chatted, and it was a fantastic conversation that I was able to share with him. And it was also his birthday, and so we got him a little cupcake, and we put a candle in the cupcake and sang happy birthday, and he blew it out. And I still have that video in my phone to this day, and I will probably save it 5 to 6 times, all these different copies, to make sure that nothing ever gets deleted forever. But in terms of something that really was my mistake at the end of the day, and that Dirk was still able to be so accommodating, it couldn't have been nicer about it. And it's one of those things where it could have been a complete disaster. Turns out it wasn't. I'm grateful to him, and now I have a really cool story to share.
So before you continue, Bob, I got a quick question for you, Edward. I always wonder why he always, when he had a small guy on him, I don't know if you know this answer or not, why did he call them Burger?
Burger? Oh boy, I do not know.
Dang,
that's a great question. I didn't even know he had done that.
That
is news.
You never heard it?
I don't know.
I got a burger on me, and like anytime somebody's small on me, he said, "I got a burger," and I was like, "Why does he say that?"
Burger is a German word, isn't it?
Yeah,
it basically tenderized meat, and then that's one of the Dirk's favorite. When Dirk came to America, that was one of his favorite things was a cheeseburger. He's gonna eat, so he's like, burger was a way of saying, "Let me eat, let me eat, let me eat."
Okay. Oh, that's perfect then.
Yeah,
that makes total sense. Now I have to go back and watch some old tapes and see what's going on there. But that's I like that. I like that.
So,
I might have to stake that one. If there was a pickup game soon around here.
Right. All right. I'm sorry.
I have another question for you. Of all your coworkers at Fox Sports Southwest, Dana Larson, Emily, who did you enjoy working with the most?
Mike Ducey.
Right. Well, at Fox 4, I mean, Mike Ducey was my boss, and he was just fantastic.
Wait, what? I thought y'all were like coworkers, but he's your boss?
Yeah, in a way. Yeah. I mean, I was, the number 2, and so I had the weekend schedule, and he was the sports director, and still is.
Well, okay, got it.
Yeah. But I mean, he was fantastic. And he's someone who was incredibly accommodating. Like, I remember when I was getting my master's degree, I had a chance to fly out to Chicago because SMU undergrad, Northwestern for grad school. Had a chance to fly out there, and it would involve taking a weekend off. And Mike was willing to cover for me so that I could be in my ceremony. So that was really nice of him to do. And that's just the guy he is. Just incredibly accommodating. Can't say enough good things about him. As far as Fox Sports Southwest, I didn't get to work with just a ton of like the Mavericks on air folks. I know them, and still keep in touch with a couple of them. Just because what I did was more on the analytics side. They sort of kept me in the studio, and I was turning segments in terms of breaking down the numbers and data trends and things like that. So I didn't get a chance to like hang out with Dana or Derek Harper or any of those great folks. Certainly I get a chance to talk to them every now and again. But when I was at Fox Sports Southwest, I also did a lot of high school football. And so, Aaron, Greg Tepper, guys like that, I probably spoke with a good bit more. And, it was great to build friendships with them that have lasted to this day.
Nice.
Was that during the Craig Miller period when he was doing football as well?
No. Craig Miller, I think he had left sometime before I got there. Yeah.
Well, back to regular scheduled programming. The Mavs franchise and how they got to Dallas. I kind of, we're going to talk about the Mavs for all night and the early years, the 90s, the Dirk era, the Luka era. So the early years, I know some people may have read about this, but it was actually Linda Carter, Don Carter's wife, that got him started. And she put up her own money for him to submit the application. And I think it was either $1,000 or $10,000. And then they had to get some money, and there was no arena. So they were proposing to the mayor to get an arena built. But Linda Carter, if it wasn't for Linda Carter, Don Carter never becomes the owner of the Dallas Mavericks. And eventually they had a lot of minority owners, some of them, and then Norm Sonju. You can't think about the early Mavericks without talking about Norm Sonju and Dick Motta. And, they built from the bottom up. This is in a time period when the NBA was just expanding. There weren't, as Wild Dog said earlier, there weren't many expansion franchises. Minnesota came along, Miami, Charlotte came along a few years later. And I don't remember the specific, but it was like maybe 16 teams at the time when the Mavericks joined in 1980. And so one of the things that the Mavericks did, and the record since been broken, but they made the playoffs in their 4th year, fastest time of any expansion franchise in all sports, not just basketball, but in all sports. And of course, you got the Vegas Knights now that made it in their 1st year. But at the time, as Wild Dog, dilution of talent, what have you, and for the Mavs to draft and make the playoffs in 4 years, that's quite an accomplishment. One of the guys that went to my high school was on the original roster. He got cut mid-season. And I'm going to use a Troy Aikman term. You were talking about Dallas being a football town. And Troy Aikman used this term. He goes, Dallas is a winner's town.
Yes.
If you win, they support you. If you don't, they don't support you. And, you know, he was referencing the Cowboys, but he called it a winner's town when he became a broadcaster. And, you know, I love my Cowboys. I had season tickets for the Cowboys. But since 1996, the last time the Cowboys even made the conference championship, you've had the Stars reach the Stanley Cup Finals 3 times. You've had the Rangers reach and win the World Series 3 times.
3 times.
You've had the Mavericks come and go to the NBA Finals and win 1. They've won 3 times. So all 3 of the other major sports teams have gone to the finals 3 times and won at least 1 championship since the last time the Cowboys were relevant. So, you know, the 80s basketball was a lot different than the 90s, and definitely a lot different than the 3-point shooting now. You had Mark McGuire, who's maybe 6'5", 6'6". He's backing down guys, you know, in the post, and him and Adrian Dantley and Barkley came up in the mid 80s. But you had the ISO was different. You backed your guy down and you took your shot or you went through them, and you had big centers and strong centers, and guards were just meant to get the ball to the big guy or get the guy in the post. So it was a different brand of basketball. But, you know, when Mr. C passed away, they gave out shirts and had a big banner there. And I love that. When they finally won the trophy, the very first thing they did was give the trophy to Don Carter to hold. But had it not been for Linda Carter and her love for basketball, it might have taken somebody else in a few years later before Dallas even got a team. And the original Dallas basketball team is known as the Chaparrals, which then became the San Antonio Spurs. So just a little revisionist history there for you.
You know, one thing to chime in here about Aikman's quote, and I think for the most part I agree with it, but I would push back on this one idea that, and it kind of, you know, plays into this idea of what Dallas is and what Dallas isn't. Yes, I do believe that Dallas is a winner's town. The Cowboys still remain the most valuable franchise in all of professional sports. You know, maybe this year things are dipping a little bit, but I think fanaticism is just as strong. I mean, they're basically like the Chicago Cubs, you know, and, you know, that it's a brand name. They don't win, you know, they won in 2006, but prior to that, you know, they weren't, or 2016, you know, they weren't winning for a really long time, but they were still incredibly popular. And they're sort of the lovable losers, so to speak. And maybe to an extent that moniker is fair for the Cowboys. But when we talk about Dallas being a winner's town, the Cowboys are able to, you know, sort of rise above that for the most part. Maybe not so much this year, but definitely it's something where even when they have these close calls, or these 8-8 seasons or whatever it is, there's still a fanaticism to it. And I don't believe that the other pro franchises in Dallas are afforded that. You know, if the Mavericks turn out to stink, people aren't showing up. Same thing with the Rangers and Stars, FC Dallas, whatever else. And I do wonder psychologically if that puts a chip on the shoulder of all of the other franchises in Dallas, that they don't get that luxury of having a fan base that will be there through thick and thin. And I think it sort of forces, I think, these teams to kind of approach things in a certain philosophy that, hey, look, you know, we're not always going to have, you know, packed stands here. We need to make sure that we're constantly staying relevant, doing whatever we can to make sure that's the case. That chip on the shoulder, I think, is something that the Mavericks do have that maybe a lot of other NBA teams may not have, just because there's a certain loyalty there that may be there when they're winning 10 games versus playing for a championship.
Right.
Yeah, and the fact that it took them to 1984, and this is our next subject, to find their first playoff win is something that has to be talked about. We're going to go back to you, Boogey Bob. When they first won it back, they played against Seattle SuperSonics, I believe.
That's right.
And won their first playoff win. What are the thoughts that you had when they won that first time and brought a playoff victory for that franchise for the first time?
My actual first Maverick game in person was 1984 playoffs.
Nice.
And so I had to go through Omega Sci-Fi fraternity. The brothers hooked me up and got me some tickets.
Nice. He's
so
over there bragging.
For all the podcast listeners, coming soon, we'll be doing a take on MFFLs. Swish for Real going to talk with MFFLs in their first Mavs game. Moody Madness, I did not get to participate in. And the reason they even played at Moody Coliseum, for those listening, Edward would know this, but Moody Coliseum was on SMU's campus, not far from downtown Dallas. And it was because there was a scheduling conflict at Reunion Arena that they even played at on the campus of SMU. And congratulations to your ponies for making the CFP.
Thank you. Thank you. Pony up, everybody.
Pony up.
And so the term Moody Madness came because the true diehard basketball fans, they hadn't even had the term MFFL yet, that it was so loud in there that the players couldn't hear their own players talk with each other. So they did beat Seattle back then. First round games were 5-game series. They beat them 3-2. I looked up the roster of that Seattle team, and I got one special name. There's 3 players I'm going to name. Jack Sigma was on that team. Tom Chambers was on that team.
Yep.
And for Wild Dog, my friend, Scooter McCrary from Louisville, Kentucky, was on that Seattle Supersonics team. And then they went on to lose to the Lakers in the Western Conference semifinals.
Yeah.
The famous Derek Harper thought they were ahead and dribbled out the clock, and they lost by 1 point. So that's my recollection of their first playoff series.
And Boogey Bob, man, I didn't even know that guy was on that squad, Tom Chambers, because I always remember him when he dunked over somebody with a vicious dunk, and I'm like, oh my God, he just murdered that guy.
Mm-hmm.
What was your thoughts, Wild Dog?
Scooter McCrary and his brother Rodney. Rodney actually played for the Mavericks at one time.
Yeah,
so Scooter and Rodney on the Louisville team were part of the Doctors of Dunk. Yeah. And that's why Houston came up with the name Phi Slamma Jamma. But it was Louisville that came up with Doctors of Dunk. And so that's why I had to put Scooter McCrary in there on that Sonics team of the 3 players that won the list.
Yeah. And Dale Griffith was Dr. Duncanstein. I remember I was a little kid and I wrote there's like, pick a story about anyone you want to write about, and I wrote about Dale Griffith, Dr. Duncanstein.
That's a unique name. And Wilder, your thoughts on Dallas Mavericks' first playoff win?
Big Mike, I was so upset. at this point, I was still like scrutinizing, disagreeing with the whole expansion team. So, and then you got Scooter McCray with the Sonics. I'm rooting for the Sonics. You got Scooter McCray over there, right? And then one of my other favorite players, David Thompson, you know what I'm saying? Even hearing blacktop stories about him, jumping and grabbing the top of the backboard and pulling himself up. Damn. It's like, my basketballism, my mind and my heart was with the Sonics to do something. And here come these scrubs. You ain't got no business being here. You're not ready. Your organization shouldn't even exist. This is what I'm on, right? And oh my God, it was rough, But then turn around. I'm like, well, if you're gonna send my guy home, Scooter McCray, well then I was even more invested, right? I'm a different mentality. If you beat me, then you better go on to win it all. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, I'm not gonna root against you. You go and win it all. Well, then I lost to the champs. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I'm watching the Mavericks, and it's not just winning and losing sometimes, okay? It's how you win or how you lose. And then it was heartbreaking. I went from hating on them, go home, to heartbroken. Because then I ended up rooting for the Mavericks against the Lakers because I hated the Lakers more than I was tired of the Lakers, you know what I'm saying? So I was a young cat and just mixed emotions. I went from like, you shouldn't even be here, go home, to like, okay, if you're gonna do something with them, you know what I'm saying? And then the way it happened, I was heartbroken. And I think that's what pivoted me. That's what put me into complete neutrality at the end of that. And then coming into the next season, I was like, I think that's when I really started beginning to actually become a Mavs fan, was having that sympathy. You know what I'm saying?
Sympathy. We brought you over to the dark side because we beat the Seattle Supersonics.
I mean, that's what it was like for me. I'm breaking down the best I can what it was like for me. And I think really that was the beginning of like, dang, well, in 4 years, they were able to like at least press the Lakers, you know what I'm saying? Because the Lakers were just rolling, you know what I mean? And had been rolling. So I was like, oh, and I think that's really the way they lost was the first turn for me to kind of be endured. And actually, I would identify it as my beginning of me becoming a Mavs fan. Was them losing to the Lakers, the way they lost to the Lakers, not just losing to the Lakers, but the way it went down. Yeah, because
they took them all the way through the every game of the series. They took every game to beat the Mavs. So
exactly.
It was amazing.
So that was the turn for me, and that's the importance of me that they had to win against the Sonics, and then the way, of course, they lost, but the way they lost made a turn for me. So when I was watching them, it wasn't with scrutiny so much as, oh, what are they doing now? Are they gonna be able to make a turn? It was my interest and my analysis of them, the motivation behind it changed. And I really think about that's when the way they lost to the Lakers in '84, that's when my fanhood began, honestly. Yeah.
Okay. That's not bad. Not bad. I don't know if you had a chance to kind of review that back in the day. You're probably too young. You're probably still not even born yet, Edward. So your thoughts as far as if you had a team that made the playoffs for the first time ever, and let's take a look at the New Orleans Pelicans. I mean, what was that like when they first made the playoffs and won the series for you? Comparisons to how we feel about our Dallas Mavericks.
It's something where it's funny, like New Orleans gets a basketball team right as I'm leaving to become a student at SMU. And so I was never really a Hornets/Pelicans fan, just because, yes, they're there, but to me, location is a tad irrelevant in terms of, my fanaticism. Like I root for you for some reason. Maybe it's because you're in my backyard, or in all likelihood, you did something for me that sort of created some kind of an attachment. So, I remember meeting Mark Cuban for the first time and him being, incredibly nice and, personable and all that good stuff, really approachable at the same time. And I thought, it's hard not to like this guy. So how could I not root for the Mavericks if that's the case? When I was at SMU, the Mavericks made the Western Conference Finals. So, rooting for a winner certainly helped as far as that was concerned. And so, I can't really recall the Pelicans, making a run to the playoffs, winning a series, all that stuff, just because it wasn't, anything that, drew me closer to them. Yes, I have, childhood friends who are big Pelicans fans, and certainly they're griping, complaining about how they're performing this year. No doubt about it. But for me, and as we talk about this first playoff series win for the Mavs, it's interesting that when we talk about the great Mavericks of all time, obviously we're all old enough to remember, the greatness of Rolando Blackman. But I do wonder if like younger generations, don't view him the same way because this is the same franchise with a Dirk and the same franchise with a Luka who've already done some phenomenal things. And I really hope that, any and all Mavs fans will go back and study up on, Moody Madness, not just because it was on the campus of SMU, but also, too, it's a chance to appreciate the excellence that is Rolando Blackman and even Mark Cuban as well, because these were guys who I think really, made the Mavericks go. And I think, too, winning that first playoff series and the first playoff appearance, one of those things where it's like, okay, just because you don't have playoff experience doesn't mean you can't win.
Right.
Sometimes you just don't know any better, and that can be and it's something where playoff experience can be incredibly overrated whenever you're handicapping these things. Yeah. And that was the case in the mid 80s when the Mavericks beat the Supersonics, and it's the case today.
All right, so officially, who is your favorite NBA team?
Oh boy. Put me on the spot here.
No.
Clippers fans watching. I'll tell you this. I will say this. I've spent a lot of time with the Mavericks, and I still have a lot of friends who are with the organization that, if they're doing well, I'm happy. At the same time, I've got friends who are with the Clippers, and when they do well, I'm happy as well. So I think it's something where you're in this business long enough, you grow enough attachments to certain people to where you try and find the good, and the glass is half full, no matter how.
Hey, I'm not gonna kill you for that answer. I'm not mad at all. So I got another question. This is actually going to our next subject. When it comes to I guess Cuban, his impact on the Mavs. Yeah. What were your thoughts, Edward, with him just making his franchise what it is now, from the cellar to it? We was like really bad for many, many years. We tried and tried and tried, but when he moved into position to buy the franchise, what were your thoughts, and what kind of impact that you could kind of, see in your own perspective that he made for this Mavericks franchise?
Well, when the sale happened, there was no way to anticipate the earthquake that he was going to create, not just for the Mavericks, but for the NBA in general. It is one of those things where when I think about Cuban's legacy, first off, how is anyone supposed to expect what he was going to do? Because I think it's something where, especially in the 90s, I wonder if there was just a certain, certainly it was the case in Dallas, but I think nationwide there was probably a certain cynicism when it came to NBA ownership, that they really cared about the product that they were putting out there. Yeah. And I think Mark Cuban got us to, respect at least some NBA owners and see that there are sports organizations with owners who give a damn. Yeah. You don't necessarily see that everywhere. And just the fact that Cuban gave a damn was, really exciting to see. And, there's so many different stats that you can point to as far as how we can quantify that. One of the things that I looked at in terms of looking at Cuban's legacy is just how much money he spent on players. What was his payroll? In the 99-2000 season, the last before Cuban was the fully fledged owner, the Mavs ranked 22nd out of 29 teams in team payroll per hoops. And then in his first full season as the owner, Mark Cuban's Mavs ranked 12th, and then 5th the following year, and then 3rd the following year, finally making it to the Western Conference Finals. And then when they made the finals in 2006, they had the second highest payroll. Juwan Howard was that first big contract. He was also paying Michael Finley. He was paying Nick Van Exel. Obviously, Dirk was very much a godsend. But the fact that Cuban was willing to pay the money to be competitive because he wanted something respectable out there on the basketball floor, that to me is his lasting legacy. And maybe it's a simple thing, but I think it's something that I wish more owners would do, not just in basketball, but in other professional sports, because not all of them are necessarily trying to be competitive every single year. Some of them, just use it as a toy box or as one among many investments. And Cuban cares. Yeah. You can say a lot of things about him, but Cuban cares. And that to me is something that, Mavs fans should be proud of.
Facts. I agree with that, man. Mark Cuban is actually a stand-up guy. I haven't had a chance to meet him in person, but we've been tweeting back and forth, and he's giving our little YouTube channel a shout out. And I was like, oh, what's up, Cube? That was pretty cool. Bob, your thoughts on as far as what Mark Cuban has brought to the Dallas Mavericks franchise, his legacy, and he just built this franchise to what it is now. But give us your take on it.
Well, I hope I don't wipe the plate clean here, at least some for Wild Dog. I'm just going to label the Mark Cuban, that's the Dirk era. When you think, those two guys are synonymous to me, Cuban and Dirk. But I got a long list here. Mark Cuban was the first owner to bring in-game entertainment during timeouts. And the rest of the NBA called it Barnum and Bailey Circus Act. They ridiculed Mark Cuban for bringing in entertainment during the timeouts. Yeah. They were the first team to do that. Yeah. Now you see every NBA team copying that.
Dang, I didn't even know that.
And not always so very well either.
Yeah.
not always.
But if you went to an NBA game before Mark Cuban on it, there was maybe some music playing, but it basically was dead. It's like during that 3-4 minutes of commercial break, there was nothing going on. And Mark Cuban brought in-game entertainment. This was long before the Maniacs, which just raises another notch. More than anything, he brought enthusiasm, as Edward was talking about. How could you not like him? He's a fan's fan. He sat up at the top row, at Mavericks games before he made his money. So he was a fan's fan. He knew what it was like to sit at the top. He brought enthusiasm. This next one, he gets dinged for it a lot, but he brought improvement to officiating and referees.
Mm-hmm.
And he got fined several times, not chump change either, $500,000, $1 million. And every time he got fined for that, he donated an equal amount to a charity. And so much to the effect that he served ice cream in the Dairy Queen store.
Yep.
So, we still, Lombardi said if you didn't have enough to overcome the elements and the officiating of the game, you didn't deserve to win. That's an old axiom. But you can't help but see the improvement in officiating, even though we still gripe about it. And you can blame or give credit to Mark Cuban for that. He was constantly complaining, constantly asking him to review, constantly. So there's a lot of processes in the NBA officiating crew now that are due to Cuban. He brought big time growth and continuity. You didn't have this waving in the wind, come and go, come and go, come and go, like some franchises. We paint Charlotte in a bad light a lot because of but he brought continuity and growth to not only the franchise, but to the players. He was the first to have big seats, so the 7-foot tall guys didn't have to crunch in a little bitty seat that fit a 5'5" guy. This next one, he brought us out of the dreadful 90s, I call them, when Jim Clemens, the 3 J's, Quinn Buckner.
That was horrible.
So he brought us out
back then.
He brought us out of that dreadful, but I won't mention this last one, and we all ought to thank him for this one. He kept Dirk a Maverick for life.
Yes.
And got Dirk a statue.
And a statue. And that was a heck of a celebration when he hit 30,000. That's why I say the Dirk era and Mark Cuban are inseparable. But had it been any other owner, they might not have been able to keep Dirk here for 21 plus years. And so I give a lot of credit to Mark Cuban for keeping Dirk here, and I'm sure, Edward, you might even be able to, for years it wasn't publicized, but Santa Dirk was a story that came out about how every year he went to the hospitals. So, as integrated as you mentioned Dirk is to the fabric and community, Mark Cuban is as well. And shout out to St. Marshall. She's carried on that tradition.
Yeah,
absolutely, she has, and it's something too where someone like Dirk, he was courted by the Lakers. Kobe Bryant, who, he loved Dirk's game. He felt like that. Dirk, in the final years of his career, had a better opportunity to win a championship there or Golden State, somewhere else. But there was a certain loyalty that Dirk had to Dallas, and certainly the city and the franchise had a lot to do with it. But I completely agree with you, Bob, that, let's not discount the relationship that Dirk had with Mark Cuban to make sure that Dirk was always, with the Mavericks. Dirk was willing to take pay cuts and do all sorts of other things to make sure that he stayed with the team. And Cubes, was a part of that every single step of the way. And, when we're talking about statues, Big Mike, like that to me is what makes, the outside of a basketball arena or a hockey arena so exciting. And for Dirk to have the first one, it's appropriate. He should. But also, I think it sort of solidifies to future generations what an impact that he had. And Cuban absolutely belongs in that conversation as well.
I agree. And speaking of statues, I'm kind of glad that Miami got the Dwayne Wade statue.
Right.
That's a slight.
And then they crafted it exactly the way that they did. That's awesome.
I love it. Yeah, it's so beautiful. We appreciate y'all, Miami, for what an amazing statue. Wow, Dog, your thoughts, man, on Mr. Mark Cuban's impact on the Mavericks franchise, man?
Oh, I'm just gonna do a little bounce backs because they didn't leave much on the bone, man. So I'm going straight to the bone marrow. So like I was hitting at, it was like, Mark's mentality, right? Mm-hmm. So really the Mavericks went from being a pet to a project, to a major, $1 billion project. So your mentality coming in is totally different. And that's no disrespect, but it's like, for the Carter, it was really a gift for his wife. Again, a pet project, right? And then the Perot's, come on.
Oh, yeah.
Again, this nice little thing I have where I can, say I have it, like a new, diamond bracelet or a new pinky ring or something. And, but when Mark came, and like Boogey said, being the fans fan, having set up in the terrace level, and
we call that the nosebleed.
And here he was, found himself in a position, to own and change things. So, and then, like Edward was saying, with ownership, it's like wherever you come from, right? If you're welcomed into to ownership in the NBA, you kind of conform and you fall in line. Mm-hmm. So nobody expecting you to color out. Not just color outside the lines, but just take the coloring book and say, okay, this doesn't, no. So literally everything was outside the box, right? It was a shock and a jolt because everybody had to be like, unlearn, forget everything you knew and the way you did it. And if you're going to stick around, we want you to stick around, but it's not going to be easy because, it's like even just wins and losses. We didn't talk about wins and losses. Did you have a good time? If somebody asks you, what was the score? Oh, I don't remember. It's just this different programming and training. Oh, I don't remember. I just remember we had a good time. It was an amazing game. And you should come next time. Or maybe I help you come to the game. And this became part of our DNA, because who doesn't know the score of the game? Who doesn't know, who dig into the box score? Our thing was, no, we getting totally away from that. Would you rather go take your family to the movies or over here or come to the Mavericks game? We want you at the Mavericks game.
And I remember that advertising. He was saying that same thing while he advertised.
But inside, and even little keywords that everybody have, it was like sharing because we have to fall in line. Whatever we do to help each other, catchphrases or mentalities, right? Even after the games, oh, we won. Win or lose, it was a good time. And it would just kind of, catchphrases would start coming out, the mentality would come out, and then next, if you have an MFFL, it's like, we lost, but that was amazing. It went down to the very last shot of the game. It's like, I can't wait for the next, you know what I'm saying? For the next one. So that was a mentality. And so then you say, and then more so, and how does that, what does that look like? What do you do? Like thinking outside the box, but a lot of times people think outside the box and everything outside the box, what do? They brush it away. Like nice brainstorming session, and they might glean a little bit, and they're like, okay, let's stay in the safe zone. No, we didn't have just one mascot. Why do we have two?
Okay. Yeah, that is a good question.
You know, and then
you got Champ and Mavs Man, right?
Mavs Man.
Yeah.
And so, and then them two cats are busy. Their schedule's full.
Wow.
If you're not asking months in advance, putting your date or your event on the calendar, they probably not going to be available for you.
Dang.
So it's not just a gimmick. Them cats have their niches, you know, on one moment, you know, some kids, you know, are scared of Mask Man. I'll never forget it. Scared of Mask Man, and it turned, and then Champ came over and was like protecting them.
Dang.
like he was protecting them. But this is Mark Cuban. And then, okay, you know, you got the Laker girls, the dance team, world renowned, you know, Laker girls, blah, 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 this and that. Why we have two dance teams?
Yeah.
One is enough. Why do you have two? You know? And why you have a bunch of fat guys out there doing really choreographed routines, not just out there acting goofy. You know, he was in Seattle, saw one fat guy that everybody loved. And it's like, what if I put not just find me a fan like that in Dallas? That's a normal person's thought process. I bet you I got some people like Boogey Bob. Mark Cuban found Boogey Bob, you know, having to be on the screen dancing. And Mark Cuban said, who is that? Who is that? Who is that? Because he wanted to know who it was and have Bob be part of, you know, the celebration, a part of the entertainment, because Bob was entertaining. So who does that? You know, traditional country club, you know, stiff owners would be like, okay, why are we doing this? And this is not. No. Mark Cuban's like, hey, who is that? Find out who that is. Tell me who. And then folks was like, oh, that's Bob Smith, or he's a ticket holder. I was like, let me get hold of that guy. Let me get hold of that guy. You know, when we come playoffs, you know, I want to put you. I remember seeing, like, we have a run sheet. I remember seeing program sheets, right? And then you see Mavs Maniac, you see dances, you see this, and then this commercial, this promo, and then you have options of a Boogey Bob. He's rolling strong. This, you know, Mavs are rolling strong, going strong into a timeout. They're gonna be looking for Boogey Bob, or the cameraman knows already, you know, have tracked and found Boogey Bob, because we're gonna put Bob up, because if we rolling, Bob's gonna be. This is the mind of Mark Cuban.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You know, two dance teams, the traditional ladies, the Maniacs, fans in the stands like Boogey Bob being part of the show. You know, that's just nobody ever does that. And then not one DJ. You say you're the inside DJ, okay, play some music. He got two. A long time we have two, because we would have parties, pregame parties on the South Side. So you have,
and you can't forget about the drum line too.
I'm getting there. You have a DJ outside. You'd have a DJ outside, right? You know, doing a party or whatever. A lot of times, we'd have like painted fans, right? Where you could dress up, paint yourself up, do a cheer or whatever to try to earn free tickets. So this is like the domino effect of Mark Cuban coming in, doing things like this. A lot of times you'd have the drum line out there, you know what I'm saying, helping with champs and helping Judge, right? So that's how they would drumline would start their game day. Was at the pregame party. Mm-hmm. Then they drum and go inside to their section, right? Work all game, right? And then after the game, what are they doing? A jam session. And you got fans out there dancing, you know, getting down, you know, people just having a good time, you know? So my goodness, I'm telling you, man, it's like, and that's just Mark. And then people will try to copy the mascot thing. They try to copy the Maniac thing. They try to copy the drumline thing. And for a lot of time, for one other reason or not, it fell short, didn't last long, or really didn't work at all. But it, like we said before, right? It starts at the top, right? The mentality and success starts at the top. We talked about Boogie Mitchell Charlotte when there's dysfunction. First, look to the top, put your blame, your energy toward the top and come down. So everything, the mindset and the taking action. If you met and discussed something that morning, by game time, someone's already implementing some portion of it, giving you some look of it. It wasn't the next day, next month, next week. No, if you talked about it that morning or the day before, by the very next game, some version of that is being developed and being implemented. That's the mentality, the mindset, and then going into full action. You can make a mistake or keep working on it, whatever. It wasn't like, oh, that scrub. No, it was nurtured and encouraged. You could do a little flop. Okay, we keep working it out, or just hold on to that till you get better. It was free flowing. It was free flowing and encouraging. Everybody can encourage each other to have ideas and send emails. If you got a theme or an idea, it don't matter who you was. I was a maniac. I could just type it up, send an email, copy my team captain, and send it to whoever it needs to go to. I'm nobody. I'm a contractor, dude. You know what I'm saying? But if I have an idea, if I have a theme, I just see that. Don't even hesitate. On your phone or whatever, send an email, copy your team captain, boom, it goes. And then a lot of times, especially me being around so long, I would see it come to fruition. Like, hey, man, you had that idea. Let's work on it. We cross departments, cross this, and you working to make it happen. So it was it's a wonderful experience. Just having Mark Cuban as an owner and working for him and just being able to contribute no matter what your status was with the organization. You were never too big or too small because you never know where the ideas or whatever's going to come from. And if anything, your issue was going to be Mark might say, why didn't I hear about this sooner?
Yeah. Or
why did you say no to that? Why wouldn't we try that? That was the issue. It wasn't like you flopped or you made a mistake. It was like, why did I hear about this idea sooner? Why wouldn't that be a yes? Why wouldn't that be a give it a try? That's where you got in problems with Mark. Seriously, you would get in trouble for limiting, creativity, limiting imagination, or constricting or dismissing ideas. That's where you got into trouble. Because all they had to do is have a good bit of traction, and Mark would be like, "What's going on? This is not what we do here." So a lot of interns, a lot of fresh eyes, fresh ears that was always coming in every year, and that really helped. So we had good, strong employees even now with everything that's going on, people that have been there over 20 years. I go to a game and say, hey, I know this cat since he was an intern. I know him 20, 25 years or whatever, And so, but always that influx of interns, fresh eyes, fresh ears, that's a part of it too, Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Bob, you had something?
Yeah, so one of the little known facts, almost every sports team in any has a public relations person, and they have to the degree marketing. But the Mavs, what most people don't know is the Mavs marketing department is much bigger than any other team. So much so that part of that in-game entertainment, they would have a video that would show on screen. It might be 30 seconds or a minute, but they would spend 4 months, a graphics team, a computer team, a CGI team, to create a 1-minute video to show to the crowd to entertain them. And we have it on Swish for Real. One of my favorites was, what day is it? Kayla. Champ. What day is it? Game day.
Game day.
Hey, a whole team of content creators.
Mm-hmm.
One of my friends, Steve Shafira, who's retired now, or even now Adam Wormuth, he was a retired Maniac. So a retired Maniac is one of the, premier graphic designers and content creators. So that was a lot of it too, was just pulling in and resourcing, and even a lot of Mavs Fans for Lives would be moderators and things of that nature, and where even Mavs Fans for Life, MFFLs, would get to be able to put their input in on what they like to see directly to employees and contractors for the Mavericks. So, we fingers were out to resource everything. But content creators are definitely a huge part of it, huge part of the show.
Thanks. And one thing I know for sure about Mark Cuban, he will surprise you with some things. And I know I'm pretty sure you guys seen this, that time where he pushed the ref and everybody was like, oh crap, he about to fight the ref.
Yeah.
Right. And it was all a freaking April Fool's joke. Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, how? But it was he's entertaining.
That
was special.
Big Mike, my eyes got so big, I was like, no, boss man. I was like, oh no, boss man.
Right.
I got to know that something look, because the uniform is really, referees are really like clean, like, you know what I'm saying? Like cut, it's like telling 1-0 from the next, but you know what I'm saying? And I was like, something don't look right about that ref.
Why are you pushing
the next moment, my first thought was, oh Lord, how much Nobel, boss man, you gone. What are you doing? Who even let him get out there like that? Why somebody grab him?
Yeah, he's always been that owner who would definitely pull, he'll pull up for his players, man. I remember one time somebody was fighting Dirk. He comes out on the floor and the ref backs him off like, all right, I'm all right, but that's Dirk, that's my guy. So he's always there. So kudos to Mark, man. We appreciate you for what you're doing for the franchise, man. You built it to where it is now, man. Even though the 80s was magnificent when it comes to us having the playoffs that we had, but now we celebrate almost 20 years of great basketball for the most part. He had some great players come through here. Vince Carter was one. The game he beat San Antonio on that last second shot. It's so many things that you can just put your hat on when it comes to what Mark Cuban has done for the franchise. So I want to chop it down to our last segment, and we're going to talk about Luka Doncic and his ability to make this team get to the NBA Finals. And we're going to start with you, Edward Egros. From a distance, I know you've been watching Luka. You've been kind of drooling over him. Why can't he come to the Clippers? Nah, we're going to keep him, man. He's staying home. So your thoughts, can he, as himself individually, I know he's been improving defensively this year because he's been criticized a lot. Can he take the Mavs to a finals championship? Your thoughts on that?
Luka Doncic can bring another NBA championship to the Dallas Mavericks. There is no doubt in my mind he can do it. And in fact, I do think that I found myself defending Luka a lot during the last finals run because he didn't look right. He looked hurt. And to me, if you aren't 100%, that's going to affect you more on the defensive end than it is, say, the offensive end. I know we mentioned this earlier with Strick when it comes to, okay, you lose your legs, you lose your shot. Yes, to an extent that's true. But I think also, too, what made Boston so magnificent in that series, he did this to Luka and he did it to the rim protectors as well, was they got them into no man's land. Basically, they forced all these defenders to become indecisive. And especially if you don't have that health, then that's going to become a problem. Who are you supposed to be guarding? How do you get there as quickly as possible? Especially with spacing, you're kicking it out to the corner all the time. All these great shooters are out there playing 5 out. It's just something where Boston just was magnificent when it came to spacing and putting guys out of position defensively. And especially for Luka, that turned out to be a big problem. But that's something that he can work on, that will develop over time. But also, too, if he can get to the finals healthy, then that's a completely different basketball player. So I look at last year and go, okay, I don't necessarily think that, we're in this era of the NBA where dynasties exist. Like, I think it's really, really hard just for any one team to get back to the finals in consecutive years. But do I think that Luka and company can put it all together, that Jason Kidd, who is this absolute mastermind, can find the right matchups in any given playoff series for Luka and Kyrie and company to be able to succeed? I do expect that one year it will all come together and Luka will be the one winning a finals MVP en route to a championship.
So with his defense improving this year, I can agree that he's actually, I believe, 5th now in steals, which is I looked that up earlier. But I'm more concerned about how he flows with the team now that they got players that really move and want to move around, more like a Golden State offense. Do you think he can play well without the ball, or do you think he still needs to dominate the ball as he did in the past?
I think he still probably needs to dominate with the ball. But at the same time, I think it's something where, regular season basketball and playoff basketball can be two completely different sports. Because if you're looking at, ISO play, I mean, later in playoff series, that's basically what it comes down to, is a lot of ISO ball with your stars hogging it for the most part. And you still feel like, I mean, that's the game. That's what it is. And I still think that the Mavericks are in a great position if and when that time comes. But when it comes to getting a good seed and getting home court advantage when these playoff series come, then I do think he does need to play within the flow of the offense just a little bit more. Maybe become more of an assist guy and make sure that he's finding the right space and being able to flow in that regard. But at the same time, I don't think we need to worry about his ISO play. I think what you're talking about makes perfect sense. It's those regular season games. And look, the Mavericks have started to put this together a little bit sooner than they normally do. Like, I know, under Jason Kidd, slow starts is just part of it. It's not a problem. I don't think it is, because look, everybody's learning. That's fine. That learning curve is just naturally going to be there. What a coach is supposed to do is figure out what matchups are most advantageous for when the playoffs come. That's exactly what Kidd is doing. So he's doing his job as far as that's concerned. And if Luka is playing a slightly different role, then that's okay. He can play that role in the playoffs, but then when it comes to ISO ball, he can take over at the same time. As long as that usage rate stays at a moderate clip, that's always going to be my concern with him going forward. Is, are you running the offense through him a little bit too much to where he's completely exhausted by the time you get to the second, third round of the playoffs? To me, things are coming together at the right time, at least this year. I'm not saying they can win a championship, but going forward, these are the developmental stages that you want to see right
now. I'm looking at the West itself and looking at OKC. I think that's where the West is going to run through right now, because what they did against the Mavs, as far as the Emirates Cups go, it shows that they are a formidable, team to beat. Out of the West, who do you think would be probably considered maybe the top three when it comes to the West in general?
Well, you mentioned the Thunder, and what they do defensively is unbelievable. I mean, SGA, to me, he may be a perennial MVP candidate, just because he's someone who always has the ball in his hands, but he's never giving it up. He is a turnover-free machine. I don't know how that happens in today's NBA, but he's able to do it. But they've got some other great players as well, in terms of great shooters, great on-ball defenders, whatever it is. So definitely, I think the conversation starts there. The Warriors have certainly impressed me a lot. How can you not like what they've been able to put together? I don't know if what the Rockets are doing is sustainable, but they've got a great coach. So that gets you somewhere. At least the creativity is there to be able to put something together in terms of, how they've built this roster. So that's certainly been intriguing. And I probably would include the Clippers in that conversation, at least for now. I certainly think Kawhi Leonard's health is going to matter a great deal. But absolutely, I think the Clippers, have gotten off to a really good start. And they've been able to mold this offense to cater a little bit more to what today's NBA is supposed to be. And it's not just shooting a bunch of threes, but it's also that ball movement and making sure that, yes, the stars get their time, but you do have supplementary characters who've been fantastic in terms of spacing, secondary assists, things like that. So I would probably say that the conversation starts with those four teams. But I wouldn't be surprised if, we're adding additional ones down the stretch, because, say, Denver starts to put it all together. Minnesota, maybe they figure something out despite being a little bit undermanned.
So last question for you. What was the thoughts? I don't know if you ask anybody out there in LA about this, of them letting go Shea.
Well, to me, part of it's the system, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you know that he's going to become, the great guard that he is? It's something where the conversation hasn't come up all that often, but it is something where, okay, is he put in the best position to succeed? you know, maybe it wasn't going to happen there. You know, but certainly OKC has you know, figured out all of that untapped potential.
Yeah, he's a great guard, and
Sure.
I hate that we got to face him all the time. Well, Dog, your thoughts on Luka taking the Mavs back to the NBA championships, and ultimately, can he help them win it?
Right. But we kind of hit on it a little bit earlier, like with Clay's role, then the same thing with Luka, right? What is your role? And can you buy into it, you know, logically buy into it, and not, when times or moments come, try to do too much, but really be able to have that trust, even if even if it's going to be a fail, but trust in the process of what you need to do and involving your teammates, whether hit or miss, win or lose. That's the point where we got to get to. So, like with Dirk's job was to be, you know, our rock solid, you know what I'm saying? You know, lunch pail and hard hat, you know what I'm saying? You know, show up to work, you know, Mr. Reliable, you're Batman, you're number one, right? But were we expecting Dirk to necessarily be a vocal leader, right? Or be a leader in the locker room, right? Or necessarily be the general on the floor? No, right? Just kind of give and take. And I've seen where, with Kyrie being on board, Luka's like, hey, no, I know my lane. Here's the ball. You know what I'm saying? You know? And you know what I'm saying? And so that dynamic. So we had the off year with them figuring it all out, right? Because Kyrie's like, I'm getting respect. This is you maintain this, you built this. And so, and we talking about how much does Luka need the ball to go through him and so forth. I just believe there's times where we can't always force it. We can't be one-dimensional, right? And that I've seen glimpses of with Luka operating without the ball, and I just need to see more of it. Him knowing, you know, when to maintain or to fake like he's posting up for a three, all the while knowing he's going to cut aggressively to the basket, right? And then giving Kyrie or whoever else an option, and him getting to the free throw line more, right? You want those calls. Luka wants those calls, right? But they have to be earned. Even MJ, it's not automatic. If you look at his early years, it was his aggression, right? And even him operating without the ball, right? They got him the respect and the benefit of the doubt, right? Right? And his execution when going to the hole. And that's what it's going to take for Luka, is him without the ball, being aggressive to the basket, getting defense caught in awkward situations, and him earning and getting to earn that whistle and getting the benefit of the doubt. That's going to change in the switch as far as Luka's performance, right? But the journey on the floor, I feel that's going to be Kyrie. The Jason Kidd from 2011 is Kyrie Irving, right? Okay, and then your rock on defense, right? And then really kind of the rock in the locker room is going to be, who's our Tyson Chandler? And I know Lively's young, but when I saw at the fan jam, the scrimmage before the preseason started, and what I saw in Gafford, it lit me up. I'm like, it's a whole new dude. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I love Lively, but I'm like, dude, Lively at the 5, Gafford at the 4. Who do I send an email to? You know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, wait a minute. I knew I liked the dude. I know his energy level. I'm like, his aura, his energy, his vertical, this is home for this dude. This dude needed this, you know, him coming and like Strickland was saying, him coming, you didn't really know what you're going to get, but difference change makes a difference. Oh, Gafford is home, baby. Because, dude, he's coming out, and I was like, oh, this is going to be exciting. I know we got a lot of things to work out, but Gafford is on a 9.5 out of 10 right now, dog.
Gotcha. So do you think Luka, what he has around him right now, can win a championship, or does he need something else to add to this roster? Because I'm really liking what Dinwiddie has brought to the team back from when he left, and he come back and bringing that same energy. I love it. But what do you think needs to be added, or does he have enough?
Hey, like Boogey Bob and I talked about, when we got Kyrie, it kind of took a year buffer, right? You know, now we got Clay coming in. We get our hired mercenary. can he buy into? Can everybody kind of adjust with respect and Clay buy into? This is what we need from you here. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and then they get adjusted. But it's just like Texas chili, bro. It's good today, but you know it's what? It's 2 times better tomorrow. For some reason, it's the same chili, but it's not the same chili. Why? Now when we make chili today, it's not even for today. It goes in the fridge and it's for that chili's for tomorrow. Don't touch it. Okay. so that's what I'm talking about with the Maverick. You gotta let it simmer. You gotta let it, change. You got to let the carbohydrates change their structure from being hot to cold. The fat.
You got a scientist over here.
Cold, and then it metamorphosizes into something that you like. Oh, what? This is supposed to be this, but where this? Yeah, just by marinating and gelling. Because I feel like the piece and the talent are there, and I feel like Kid is comfortable with his coaching staff. There might be a tweak there or something, but he's flowing, and he's trying to operate within the players. Being more of a player's coach and giving patience, having the vision. That's key, especially for a coach. Having the vision of where we're supposed to go. Okay, then how do we get there? And you don't get there by, stepping on toes or breaking fingers. It's like that's when you get more of the Zen master, Phil Jackson type mode of your coach, where it's the more mental,
Thanks.
Because you can't just, it is what it is, human nature. You can't just tell somebody, oh, wait, how you gonna disrespect me, man? I'm this. But kind of structuring, like, hey, can you see this? At some point, can you see this, right? And that's a lot of time the slow starts, like Ed was talking about with Jason Kidd, because like, I'm not making any assumptions about what we did last year. That was last year, right? Today's today. This is this year. Where are we at? And then we grow and develop, because he knows we got all the time in the world until we get towards the All-Star weekend. Then we need to be rolling.
Yeah.
That's the dynamics of it. And that's why you have the cup. Because you got teams like, ooh, they so bad, they so cool, they deserve to win a cup, right? But come the end of the season, what happened to them? The wheels fell off, the windshield cracked. You know what I'm saying? The whole bus rolled over, into the ditch.
Jeez.
I'm glad we have the cup. Congratulations, but we're here for the chip. So,
Thanks, Bob. I don't know, you got a lot to say about Luka as far as him being able to get us back to the finals. And alluded to what Edward said. I agree with him. I think he can get us back there, but to win it depends on who we face off against. Boston, I don't know if we figured them out just yet, because they're similar to me. If you think about it, they remind me so much of the Golden State Warriors when they were formidable, like when they had Kevin Durant and all those shooters, man. How can you play against that? But your thoughts, man, you think he can get us back there with what he has now on this roster? How can that be a success when it comes to getting back to the finals for Luka?
Yeah. Yes, unequivocally, he's going to bring a chip. He might bring 2 or 3.
Confidence.
What happened against Boston? That third game, he missed a shot, committed a foul, and I said at the time that it happened, I'm like, players miss a shot and don't get the call, and they compound the mistake by committing a stupid or silly foul, and it's not exclusive to Luka. You see it in every game, every team, where someone but he fouled out of that game, and that silly frustration foul. That forget about barking with the referees or being injured, but that silly foul in Game 3 was the difference. It was a close series. KP and I, even on our podcast, I said he'll have one great game, but he won't last the whole series. And he did. His Game 1, he had a great game. He had a couple flat tires, and he didn't finish. And Al Horford, capable substitute, came in and played out his mind.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a lot of things that just fell Boston's way. But I think that series was a lot closer than what people think. And as Erick Strickland said, I think the Boston fans got into Kyrie's head.
Yeah.
And you get into the player's head. That was I wasn't nowhere near the most talented or athletic, but I knew how to get into somebody's head. even in bowling, if I get into the other person's head, they're a better bowler. I can beat them because I make them think. Jack Nicklaus said, "So what's your trick to win?" And he goes, "Well, in the last round, I just congratulate the guy on the first hole and say, 'Do you always hit that good when your shoe's untied?'"
Damn.
That's a Jack Nicklaus quote. And the guy would be thinking about whether the shoe was tied. He wasn't thinking about what his game was. So, getting in a player's head. But here's what I wrote down. And this is a sort of a bias, but it's also statistically based. Luka is breaking Jordan and LeBron records. Just think about that for a second. He reached 1,000 points in playoffs quicker than Jordan and LeBron. There was only one other player, I forget who, that reached 1,000 points quicker than Luka. Jordan won his title in his 7th year. Jordan, much like Luka, led the league in scoring. And when he was ball dominant, they didn't call it that then. He hadn't quite, he was getting that turnaround fade away. They ISO'd. But it wasn't until he started including teammates that they won the championship. He had players around him, but it wasn't until he started including them in the game and that's Michael Jordan, the GOAT, in my mind. LeBron didn't win his first chip until the 8th year. He made the finals earlier, but he didn't win a chip until the 8th year.
Yeah.
Luka is just now in his 7th year. He's just now learning the mental side of the game. Yet he's a basketball savant. He's got ridiculous basketball IQ. I think that's why him and Kidd was a perfect coach, is because they think the game similar.
So you're saying there is a chance?
I think there's a synergy there between Kidd and Luka that you don't see because it's behind the scenes and off the court. And I forget whether it's Avery or somebody. I think it was Rick Carlisle. Rick Carlisle said, "If you don't get along with your best player, then you're doomed as a coach." So where I see the growth from Luka is he watched him win when he was out for 5 games, a little over 10 days. He's like, I got some talent on this team. They got guys that can create their own shot, not just Dinwiddie, but I love what Najee Harris brings to the table. I love what Quentin Grimes brings to the table. So you traded. I mean, we love Derrick Jones Jr. and love Josh Green. They were flashy. They had all kinds of jump, athletic. But as far as well-rounded players, I think between Grimes and
Najee
Marshall, they can create their own shot. And that is something that you had 2 players, they relied on Luka to create their own shot. Now you've added 3 guys, Marshall and Grimes and Clay, who can create their own shot. And that takes a big load off of Luka. So him learning to share, he doesn't really have to adapt his game. Early comparisons when he got drafted was a lot like James Harden. I think they've got the talent. It's, as I repeat, Jordan won it in his 7th year. Now, he had to go against Bird and he had to go against Magic and all that. But you look into history, most players that win an NBA Finals MVP, there was a graph on ESPN. It is generally when they hit age 26, 27, 28 when they win their first championship. Luka turns 25, just turned 25. So we're not even, we think we're in peak Luka, but we're not. I mean, he's not only growing in the game, he's physically growing still. They say he's 6'6", but when you see him standing next to PJ Washington, he's about the same height as some of the small power forwards in the league. Even Jason Kidd, who was a big guard at the time, played at Santa Clara, I think, out in California, and Strickland talked about earlier. Jason Kidd was considered a big guard in his day. And he said, they asked him about Luka, he's like, that's a big boy. So, but his body takes, much like Shaquille, he takes a pounding throughout the season. So not only limiting Clay's minutes, but limiting the amount of, you don't see him going to the paint near as much early in the season as you have in past seasons. Uh, he's picking his choices when to go or when to post up. And I think that's all in an effort just to save his body, because 82 game pounding, pound, all that physical contact, it don't bother Luka, but it has a cumulative effect. So it's his 7th year. So if it's not this year, it's going to be very close. And to the point you asked about SGA with Edward, Doc Rivers, they asked him, said, would you have traded SGA if you didn't know? He said, I knew he was going to be good, but I didn't know he was going to be this good. That was Doc Rivers. Doc Rivers said they didn't want to trade SGA, even though he was blocked. But the only way that Sam Presti, another great GM, another great organization, and a great owner, he said, you're not going to sign and trade for Paul George unless we get SGA and a buttload of first-round draft picks. And, you know, the game on Tuesday for the Meredith Cup, the Mavericks had a bad game. Let's just face it. Other than Marshall, they shot poorly. They had a bad game. They laid an egg. But what really showed up in that game, Oklahoma City didn't, they had control of the game. They didn't really beat them that bad, that much, for as much a disparity. But what you saw is team speed for all the people that watching it. When I did a pickup game, you know, and you call next, and you get the guys, I'd take a guy with speed over height every time. Because if you can't get your feet there, it don't matter how tall you are. And Oklahoma City, no matter what 5 guys they put on the court, they're fast. And I'm not talking about run up and down the court fast. I'm talking about their lateral movement, their quick movement. They have that quick twitch to where they can make that first step real quick. They can run down. They had Mavericks had like almost 20 turnovers, which has been creeping up on them.
Yeah, that killed me. I was so mad at that game.
I mean, Luka had 3, you know, trying to push the ball up the court, bad passes that were intercepted. But that just shows you the team speed that the Thunder, and, you know, speed kills in every sport. And, you know, they don't have Chet Holmgren, and I guess he may come back. But, you know, Hartenstein's playing. He's had a couple flat tires. But, you know, we talked about Dagnall being coach of the year last year. He's a very good coach. But watch an Oklahoma City game against somebody else, and you'll see their team speed. That's why they get steals. That's why they have a fast break. They're to the spot before the other player, no matter what position. And it isn't just one guy. It's 5 guys. And I think they purposely drafted that way. What will come is, like Edward said, it's a different game in the playoffs. Is can they take the physical pounding in the playoffs that they're not going to get during the regular season?
Yeah,
so
the Mavs are going to really throw them lobs over their head a lot, and if they don't have Chet to actually back that up, as far as helping out on defense, it's going to be a free fall, because the Mavs are absolutely beasts when it comes to just getting rebounds and throwing lobs.
In Oklahoma City, you know, they're leading the league, I think, in offensive rebounds. That's where the quickness shows up. But physicality, you got to have a couple dogs between PJ Washington and Gafford. You got a couple dogs that are going to physically play tough, and that doesn't mean Detroit Pistons bad boys.
You got Nazi and you got Grimes now, so those 2 more dogs you added to the kennel.
Yeah, so you know, the one way you beat speed is you slow the game down, and then you pound them, and then you, as I was saying earlier, legs go, shot goes. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander shot 70% from the field, and yet they only won by 12 points.
Mm.
I mean, what player shoots? I mean, Luka had what, 70 some odd points against Atlanta where he shot 70%.
73.
And Shea only took like 20, 21 shots, but he dominated the game, much like, I always remember Dirk. You look up a scoreboard in the fourth quarter and you're like, he's got 25 points already, and yet you're like, you couldn't remember that he dominated the game. And you look at in the stats the next day, he would be like 10 of 14, 9 of 15. He didn't take 30 shots a game. He would score his 20 and they maybe take 10 or 12. And when Luka gets to be that efficient, then that's a whole different animal. And I think that's where you're going to see his growth this year. And Kai, statistically, I don't know if you've been watching, but statistically, Kai is having his best season ever. His shooting percentage, his free throw percentage, his 3-point percentage, every one of them is his career high right now.
Yeah, because he's more of a happy player now. He hasn't been happy in his last 2 seasons, not seasons, but 2 teams that he played for, Boston and New Jersey. Was it New Jersey or Brooklyn? I'm sorry, Boston and Brooklyn. He hadn't been happy. So now that he's got a place where he feels comfortable and people accepting him, now I think he has that ability to turn it on the way he used to when he was playing in Cleveland.
That is a very valid point. There was a quote from Kyrie. He had that wrist injury. He had to take some time off during the summer, but they asked him what he worked on. And he said, now that I know what I need to do to help Luka, he said, I'm looking to be the most efficient scorer. He goes, I can get to my spot. I know where I need to be. He said, I don't need 20 shots a game. He goes, he openly said his goal for the season was to get 20, but only have to take 10 shots.
Yeah.
And so you're seeing the evolution of multiple players. And by the way, I'm watching Tim Hardaway Jr.'s stats in the paper, and I'm watching Josh Green's stats in the paper. We didn't lose nothing.
Yeah.
We didn't lose nothing.
Why you had to go there?
Right. All right. So, before we close out, Bob, I just want to just confirm. You said in the 7th season, which is coming up for Luka, it may be an opportunity for him to bring that championship, 7 or 8 season for Luka. Yeah. So if that be the case, man, we should have some banners to hang around here.
We're gonna have another one of these in the next year or two. That's my prediction.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, guys, it's been a great show, man. I appreciate everybody for coming on. Let's close out. And Edward, give the people your social media information where they can find you at so they can give you a shout out and let them know what you're all about, man.
Appreciate that. You can find me on X. You can find me on Instagram at @EdWithSports, @EdWithSports. Also got a Threads account and a Blue Sky account, and basically any kind of new social media platform that's out there. I still need to work on the TikTok a little bit, but maybe you guys can show me some moves off camera. But definitely, whatever social media platforms out there, please come and find me, and I appreciate it.
Man, thanks for coming on. I appreciate you. Bob Dogg, give the people your information so they can find you on any social media streets, man.
Hey, I don't be doing too much. Y'all can find me on YouTube at WildDog357. That's at Wild DOGG 357, and on Swish for real, baby.
Swish for real. And last but not least, actually one of our favorite people to come on all the time, Boogey Bob. Give these people your handles for the social media streets so they can find you. Well,
first I want to give a shout out and a thanks to Edward for replying to my Facebook IM. A lot of the sportscasters, more of them know me than I know them. A few of them I've got to talk with, but thank you very much for answering and coming on the show. And I didn't know you already knew Big Mike, but anytime you want to come on and talk basketball with us, please come on. We'll root for your ponies.
Thank you.
Uh,
Thank you. I knew that was sort of a contractual requirement coming in, was that everyone has to root for SMU against Penn State.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you get any SMU tickets that fall in your lap, hey,
We'll warm the seats for you.
Next weekend it'll be hard, but if they win, then let's see what happens.
I've been to football games. I took my son to basketball games, so it's easy for me to go over there. I'm like, hey, I'll be at SMU.
All right,
So
Bob.
you can find me on YouTube at Boogey Bob, or you can find me at Swish for real. Subscribe right there. Subscribe. Swish for real. Or down here, there'll be a click for link. And for all you listening, tomorrow, special Saturday, December 14th, 5:30, live. Swish for real. Going to bring it to you tomorrow.
Blues Burgers. We're going to be live like we did last time. We're going back to Blues Burgers. Edward.
Is it blues? Is it blues like blue cheese? I keep thinking about blue cheese, man. I like a blackened burger with blue cheese. That's why
they might have that though.
That's a Minneapolis staple there. That's where you find those.
Again, guys, thanks again for joining in. It's been a great show. Edward, man, we'll have to chop it up soon. You guys have your weekend back to you. Swish for real, and we are out, fellas. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, all right? Peace.
That's it, Pray.